Well, hello, Robin here, and this is the next in the series that Sue told you about, a story from the Bible, but we're not telling you where it is. You've got to find out for yourselves. So here we go with the next Where Is It story, and this is about a character from the Bible called Moses. You might well have heard of him. Well, here's his story. Actually, it starts before Moses was born. You see, the Hebrew people, we would call them the Jewish people today, were living in Egypt. And they'd gone there to escape a great famine. So they lived in Egypt for quite a while. And while they were there, they obviously got married and they had lots of children. And the Egyptian Pharaoh, that's like their king, got quite worried because he suddenly realised that the Hebrew people were breeding much faster than the Egyptians. And he got frightened that sometime they might rise up and take over the whole of Egypt. So he had an idea. Actually, from our point of view, it was a bad, evil idea. But the Pharaoh thought it was a really good idea. So he said to the midwives who used to go and help the Hebrew women to have their babies, "Now listen to me. If one of those babies is born a male, I want you to kill it." Well, you can imagine what the midwives thought. Our job is to help babies, to keep them alive. So they refused to kill them. So over time, more and more Hebrew babies got born. The male babies lived. And Pharaoh was very angry. And he called the midwives again and he said to them, "Look, I told you to kill them." He said, "Look, we're trying to do that, but what happens is they have the babies before we get there, so there's nothing we can do about it." Pharaoh said, "Now listen, this is what you've got to do. When you see a male Hebrew baby, throw it in the river." So the midwives went away and thought, well, there's nothing much we can do about this now. Now at that time, a man and a woman, we don't know what their names were, Hebrew people in Egypt had a baby. And the baby was Moses. But of course, the danger was that as soon as he was born, he was just going to get thrown into the river and drowned. But his parents had a good idea. So they made this waterproof basket and they put Moses in it and they hid him in the reeds in the river, and then they were going to go down each day and feed him and look after him. Well, he'd only been in there just a few hours when who should come walking alongside the river but Pharaoh's daughter. And as she was walking along, she looked down and she heard a gurgling sound. And she looked down. "Oh," she said, "there's a beautiful little baby in the bulrushes." So her maids got the baby out, took it to the Pharaoh's daughter, and she said, "I am going to adopt this child. I'm going to look after him, and I'm going to give him a name. I'm going to call him Moses, because Moses means drawn out, because he was drawn out of the river." So the baby then went into Pharaoh's palace. But of course the problem was Pharaoh's daughter hadn't had the baby, and therefore she couldn't feed it because she didn't have any breast milk to feed it with. So she asked her maids to find somebody who could feed the baby. And when they went out, who should they come across but Moses' mother? And they said to her, "Could you feed this baby?" And she said, "Oh, I would love to." So she did. So Moses ended up being brought up in an Egyptian palace as an Egyptian, but with his own mother, his real mother, looking after him. But you see, he realised that he was a Hebrew. And when he was grown up and was a young man, he went out one day and he saw some Hebrews being beaten by an Egyptian. He had a long whip and he was whipping the Hebrews and he was going to kill them. So Moses took out his sword and killed the Egyptian. and then he ran and hid. He just hoped that nobody had seen him. But 2 days later, he came across a couple of Hebrews who had seen what had happened, and they told Moses. Moses was frightened to death, and he thought, I will now be killed myself, so I'm going to run for it. So he ran, and he ran out of Egypt. He went into the desert of Midian, and he hid there. And while he was there, he went to a well to get some water, and some young women came along, and he helped them to feed the sheep. And one of them really liked Moses, and he really liked her. So her father said, you come and live in our house, and you help us look after the sheep, which he did. And then he married the woman. She was called Zipporah. And the two of them were married, and they had a little boy called Gershom, and they lived in the desert in the middle of Midian for a long time. Until one day, Moses was going out to try and find to feed the sheep, and guess what happened? Well, he saw this amazing sight. You see, this bush on the side of the mountain burst into flames. Now, you and I would have thought that was an amazing thing. For Moses, he lived in the desert, and bushes did that every now and then because it was so hot. They burst into flame. But as Moses looked at this bush, he could see that though it was burning, it wasn't burnt up. He stared at it in amazement. And then a voice came out of the bush. Moses, take off your sandals, for your feet are standing on holy ground. Moses realized that he was face to face with the angel of the Lord God of Israel. And he fell on his knees before him. And the angel said to him, Moses, I have a job for you. What? Said Moses. You are to return to Egypt, said the angel. You are to go to Pharaoh, and you are to tell him, let my people go. Now Moses was frightened to death at the thought of having to go back to Egypt, where he'd killed the Egyptian, go before Pharaoh, the most powerful man in the world at that time. And so he said to the angel, but if I go, how will he know that I've come from the Lord God? I will give you a sign, said the angel. Throw down your staff. So Moses took his wooden staff and he threw it on the floor, and it nearly frightened him to death because it turned into a snake. The angel said, pick it up by the tail. Moses said, but it might bite me and it's poisonous. The angel just watched him. Moses bent down, touched the tail, and it immediately turned back into a wooden staff. Moses was still worried, so he wanted another excuse, and he said, what if they don't believe that sign? The angel said, put your hand into your cloak. Moses did so, and as he drew it out, it was covered in leprosy, a terrible skin disease. The angel said, put it back into your cloak. Moses did so, and as he did so, and took it out, it was healthy. Moses had one last excuse. He said, I can't speak very well. When I get tongue-tied and nervous. The angel said, oh, look, Moses, I am getting tired of you and your excuses. Look, your brother Aaron, who can speak well, can go with you. And so the two of them set off to return to Egypt, to come face to face with Pharaoh, the most powerful man in the world. And they were really frightened. We'll find out what happens next time.